And when people, lower ranked chimps go towards the alpha, they're deferent, they look down, they're subservient. There is a second way of projecting power that the human species uniquely has, which is called prestige dynamics, where you articulate a moral argument. You inspire people to come behind you. You show humility. People come and they're more open in their posture. This is now, the paper was written about 15 years ago, but it's been corroborated by a huge amount of social psychology. America, it seems to me, has always been, by and large, a prestige nation, a city on a hill. It's been hypocritical, but it's tried to project power by harnessing it to a moral arc that could inspire people.
Hello, this is Hugo Rifkind here on Times Radio, currently unpacking the politics of the day with Daisy McAndrew and Matthew Syed. I want to talk a bit about our Navy. Because the US's Operation Epic Fury, which has involved the destruction of 18 Iranian ships, has brought into sharp focus the state of the British Royal Navy, which currently has no ships in the region for the first time in half a century. The Times' defence editor, Larissa Brown, has been writing about why our naval fleet has shrunk to its smallest size since the English Civil War. I dare say our current Navy would have beat the Navy that they had in the English Civil War in other matters, but the fact that it's simply so small is shocking quite a few people. But Daisy, does it matter? Does it matter now? We're not the same country we were during the Civil War, certainly not afterwards. We're a mid-size power, big by European standards, but small compared to everybody else.
I don't think it really matters about what size we are. It matters what the threat is against us. And of course, what's been happening for a long, long time, as Matthew's been alluding to, is that defence spending has been going down and down. And a lot of that has come back to what I was talking about, public opinion. Public opinion didn't particularly want to see our money being spent on defence. They wanted it to be seen to be spent on other things that had a bigger impact in our day-to-day lives. And this is always fundamentally comes back to the short-termism of politics and the electoral cycle. And can you go out electioneering or a by-election or an election and say, what I'm going to do to you is spend more money on defence, or I'm going to put more money in your pocket with a tax break? You can see why this has been happening for so long, particularly because the economy has been struggling for many, many years. So this has just been put on, the sort of the other people's in trays. And that's why, that's a large reason of why we are where we are. The other reason was, of course, is because it became fashionable to say we can defend ourselves with cyber and with tech and all those things. We don't need boots on the ground. We don't need ships on the sea. And that, again, I think many people now, particularly post Ukraine, think that was a mistake. So we are dealing with a lot of mistakes, and turning these things around takes a long time. You can't just shove a load of money into the MOD and expect results. You've got to build ships, you've got to train troops and all the rest of it. So we are in this situation, and it's not going to be quick to turn it around.
Matthew, is a Navy what we should... if we agree, and I think we probably all agree that we should have been spending far more money on our defence for quite a long time, is a massive Navy what we should have been spending it on?
I don't feel I can answer that, Hugo. I would, if I was a politician, I would get a group of advisors who are cutting edge on the array of capabilities we need, from cyber to Navy to air, the nuclear deterrent. But you're right that you both need to spend the right amount of money, and you also have to procure efficiently. Our procurement has been profoundly inefficient for a long time. I've just asked ChatGPT, forgive me, to look at the relative size of the armed forces at the time Wilson didn't go and join America in Vietnam. Just if you look at the regular forces, there were 415,000 in 1965, Navy 99, Army 184, RAF 132. Today, the entire regular force is just 137,000, and it makes me laugh. I've joined the Conservative Party, as you might know, Hugo, but Cameron came in 2010 and cut spending on defence every single year. So cumulatively, the cut was enormous, hollowing out our capability. So I feel some sympathy for the government with enormous debt, rising welfare, a real fiscal predicament, whilst trying to increase. And as Daisy says, it takes time to really get the array of assets in place that we need. I went down to Portsmouth and spent time with the Admiralty. But it was a few years ago now, and I wasn't convinced by the analysis at that time that we need a large Navy, to be honest, Hugo. But I'd have to look at it again.
I always find it slightly maddening that we talk about this just in sort of money terms anyway, because it's what you can and do spend the money on. Like we were hearing this week that an Iranian drone can be built for around 20 grand. The missile that you're going to shoot it down with may cost 10 times that. And
exactly.
so we increase our military spending by £1 billion. The things China can do with £1 billion are very different from the things we can do with £1 billion.
Yes, and if you look at the defence structures that places like Israel have, of course, they have built that incredible structure to defend them against what is an imminent threat. Nobody is suggesting that we should be building some sort of iron dome over the UK. So everybody does have to work out what is the threat we are facing, what's the most cost-efficient way of defending ourselves against that. But Matthew's right, that also comes down to how much money are we wasting? And procurement with MOD has been so appalling for so long. It would take hours to unpick why that's been and whether that's just simply been mistakes.
We built an aircraft carrier without any aircraft.
Yeah,
remember that one?
And we have these issues across so much of our public sector. Whether or not it's a NHS IT development that cost the country billions and never came forward. We know about all these white elephant horror stories, and there is something about our system that seems to do it worse than other places. And I think we do need to learn the lessons of why other countries are so much more efficient than we are. And then some of that comes down to our productivity. And I could get really boring about the economy, but these issues are all related.
Matthew,
I agree with all of that. Can I make one brief point, which is that, as journalists, we find it difficult, don't we, when we have to write for the magazine and there's a 10-day lead time, and we're like, well, hang on, by the time the readers read our words, the world might have moved on. Yeah. Imagine if you're building a major military asset which won't come into operation in 10 years or 15 years, and by that time AI will have transformed the military capacity of our adversaries, autonomous drones, all sorts of other things. I did a deep dive into this. I wish I had brought up my notes, but it's remarkable how rapidly the military capabilities are changing, and therefore how tough it is to be wise about what our needs will be in 10 years when the assets we start to build will be deployed.
And what we do know is that when somebody goes to a Whitehall department and says, I've got a fantastic wheeze of how we can save a lot of money, you're going to be pressing at we're pushing an open door then. The politician will say, excellent, I love that idea, let's do that. And then 5 years later, when that idea actually turns out to have been a complete waste of time and money because of whatever reason technology's moved on, it's someone else's problem anyway, so it doesn't matter. So you don't have that accountability.
And the person who suggested it now is off working for an arms company.
Exactly.
Probably. Yes, quite. Look, I want to talk about something else very much linked to this, which is the language the US government is using to talk about this war. Here's Donald Trump's War Secretary, Pete Hegseth.
Only the United States of America could lead this. Only us. But when you add the Israeli Defense Forces, a devastatingly capable force, the combination is sheer destruction for our radical Islamist Iranian adversaries. They are toast, and they know it.
That's Pete Hegseth. And overnight on its X account, the White House posted a video which blended scenes from a video game, we think it's Call of Duty, with actual scenes of Iranian targets being destroyed. This is the soundtrack. So add to all that the fact that they've called this Operation Epic Fury, with epic meaning a long and arduous task of the sort that this isn't meant to be, and fury meaning irrational rage. There's just the language in which this war is being discussed from the Americans. It might not be the most important thing, but the neocons in the Republicans 10, 20 years ago wouldn't have talked like this, would they, Daisy?
No, of course they wouldn't have. But then again, none of them would have talked in the way that Donald Trump talks. And there are elements of his supporters who love the way that he addresses them and seems to be shooting from the hip and talking truth and all the rest of it. And also there is something about our British sensibility where it just makes us cringe and we don't like it at all. So but bearing all of that in mind, yes, it makes me feel extremely uneasy. I do know that he's got a popularity problem, that this whole push into Iran and other foreign nations, there is a MAGA issue with that. They don't like it. So I do wonder whether this is trying to get them on board and trying to get them to see that this is somehow very exciting and sexy and all the rest of it. I mean, beyond that, I'm not sure how to defend it. I'm not defending it, but I'm not sure how one would.
I mean, look, Matthew, look, on some level, there are obviously more important things in the war than how it is being talked about. But then how it is being talked about does affect how it is conducted, and it affects what people thinks about it, and it affects motive and all that. How do you feel when you hear this kind of language coming out of the White House?
I think it is extremely significant. one of the most significant aspects of all in this war. Just two things that I'd say. One is the enemy is evil, so you want to take them out. I just wanted to make that quick point. But as you say, the language is categorically different from previous wars. And I thought very much about a wonderful paper written by two Harvard anthropologists, Joseph Henrich and Francisco Gil White, where they talked about two different ways of projecting power. All primates except humans do so through dominance, the alpha. They try and make sure that people acquiesce in what they decide by using fear. And when people, lower ranked chimps go towards the alpha, they're deferent, they look down, they're subservient. There is a second way of projecting power that the human species uniquely has, which is called prestige dynamics, where you articulate a moral argument. You inspire people to come behind you. You show humility. People come and they're more open in their posture. This is now, the paper was written about 15 years ago, but it's been corroborated by a huge amount of social psychology. America, it seems to me, has always been, by and large, a prestige nation, a city on a hill. It's been hypocritical, but it's tried to project power by harnessing it to a moral arc that could inspire people. I remember seeing a sign in a nation that America had invaded, which was said, "America, go home, but take me with you." And there is a sense that for all the distaste about some of the things America has done, there was something prestigious and something admirable. I've always felt that way about America. Hugo, I think this language could not be more significant.
You're calling Donald Trump a chimp, is what you're doing with that argument, aren't you, really?
Well, that's too kind to chimps.
I tell you, one of the other aspects of this when it comes to language that I have found very worrying are the reports, and I haven't seen them verified, but reports that there are military leaders in the States when they are talking to their troops about this, push into Iran and describing it as a sort of holy war.
Yeah.
That Donald Trump is doing it because it's God's will.
Which Bush did and regretted.
Which Bush did and regretted. And obviously we don't do, I know it's different, we don't do religion in the same way. But the idea that these troops are being fed a line that this is God's will, that this is some sort of holy war, I do find very, very unnerving.
That's a really clear sort of British-American difference, because the extent to which they talk about religion in all aspects of politics, I think we find deeply uncomfortable here.
Of course, but also the idea that a general here would talk to his troops and say that what boys and girls, what we're doing is God's will, and that our Prime Minister is God's servant. That is a holy war. That is something we're just not. That's not how we do things.